Zach is back. It's the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
Welcome back in. 4:15 is the time in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios. We opened up the show talking about the Sixers, how Bryan Colangelo wasn't telling anyone about the injury. Then Derek Bodner breaks the story, and now we know what happened with Joel Embiid with the low-grade tear of the meniscus, and he'll be out for tonight and probably be out for probably coming back after the All-Star break, and we'll see when he does come back, as we don't know. It's an ambiguous situation right now with the Sixers big man. So let's get some clarity as we're joined right now by the Philadelphia Inquirer's very own Mike Sielski, who joins us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Mike, appreciate the time, and how are you?
I'm doing well, Zach. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming on. I do appreciate it. So when Colangelo took over the job, you knew the people that were anti-Sam Hinkie, and a lot of people were saying, okay, now we'll have some more clarity. There will be some more transparency. And that's been the exact opposite. There hasn't been a lot of improvement. I know Colangelo has done a few more interviews and a few press conferences. But how about the way Colangelo has handled this Embiid news? Because it's a really bad look to me for the Sixers organization.
Well, I think it's a different set of circumstances. I agree that Bryan has not handled this well. I think the difference between the way Hinkie handled things and the way Colangelo handled things is that Hinkie was much more disciplined about not letting anything out, ever. Now, he also had the advantage of being completely upfront and kind of tunnel vision oriented about what they were doing for the first 3 years. They were tanking. He told everybody they were tanking. That was the end of the story. Bryan Colangelo came in with a slightly different mission. The idea was to transition the Sixers away from tanking and into actually improving. What I would take issue with Bryan is that he hasn't been as disciplined in terms of getting his message out there and picking and choosing the wrong times to talk. And, for instance, after or during the summer, leading into and after the draft, he made it very clear and spoke publicly that the Sixers were going to, had a glut of big men and they were going to try to achieve roster balance and make a trade or move somebody. Well, yeah, an opposing team or fans can look at the Sixers roster and see that, but the fact that you would say that so, forwardly doesn't help your leverage, doesn't help you in any way, try to make a move, to get rid of a Jahlil Okafor and Nerlens Noel or achieve that roster balance. And it seems as if he kind of, he's much more of an insider within the NBA than Sam Hinkie ever was. And I think that lends itself to kind of this expectation that he's going to be more forthcoming when, in fact, he really hasn't been. On the one hand, you can argue if you weren't upset about Sam Hinkie being quiet, then you shouldn't be upset about Bryan Colangelo being quiet. I think the circumstances are a little bit different, and I think it's turned out to be a weakness for Colangelo. I really think that he's misunderstood to a certain extent the way Hinkie did how much openness the Philadelphia market demands. This is not Phoenix. This is not Toronto. You're not going to get very far being tight-lipped around here.
Mike, the one thing I don't understand, and with this whole situation, is you have a player that has the potential to be a transcendent player, not only for Philadelphia, but for the NBA with Embiid, and he's been on the bench for a while. Like, how does the general manager of the Sixers, and I understand, GMs aren't going to tell you everything, I don't expect them to tell us everything, but how does he not tell you that this guy has a low-grade tear in the meniscus? I just don't get that. It's unfathomable to me.
Well, here's a couple things, possibilities, and I don't know this for certain. I'm speculating. I'm going to try to extrapolate and think through why they would keep from revealing this. One is a really cynical answer, which is, of course, that if you make it public that Joel Embiid has a meniscal tear, that he's, however, to whatever degree, he's more severely injured than just a bone bruise, you run the risk of harming ticket sales. That if you tell people he's going to be out for a couple of weeks, people are not going to buy tickets, whereas if you say it's a bone bruise and he's day-to-day, people will continue to buy tickets to Sixers games on the hope that he will play, and then they'll be disappointed having already purchased the tickets when they find out that he's not going to play. The other thing is that if you, and this is something that not everybody has mentioned, but, and I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody about it yet, but I would like to kind of probe on this, is, one of the reasons, probably the primary reason, that Sam Hinkie is no longer the general manager and president of the Sixers is that he was completely upfront from the get-go, from the start of his tenure with the Sixers, about what he planned to do. They were going to tank. They were not going to try to win from a player personnel acquisition standpoint. And the talent that they did have, i.e. Nerlens Noel, for instance, and Joel Embiid, they were in no rush to get those guys on the floor. They were going to take their time and kind of nurse those guys back, and however long it took was how long it took. Bryan Colangelo, once Hinkie left, whether it was the NBA forcing him out, the Sixers forcing him out, the NBA mandating that Jerry Colangelo come in and bring in a new GM who turned out to be his son, Brian. If you're the Sixers now, Bryan Colangelo has to operate under the presumption that you can't do that. Your predecessor got booted out of there basically because he took his good sweet time to bring good players back to the lineup. If you revisit that, if you try that same strategy, there's going to be some blowback. And I would love to shoot Bryan Colangelo up with sodium pentothal and ask him, are you getting any pushback from the league? Or do you fear getting pushback from the league if you say, hey, Joel Embiid is going to be out for a couple of weeks, even though it's a minor knee injury? And that's the thing that nobody's talking about. The reason Hinkie's not there anymore is because they held talented players off the floor. Now the Sixers have held a talented player off the floor and not revealed, one of the reasons they were doing it. It's something I wonder about.
So he gets the MRI on January 20th, and then a few days later he plays on that national televised game against the Rockets, and he played very well. He didn't look like he was hurt, but even after the game he said he felt sore, and the story goes that he implored the Sixers to let him play in that game. Do you think the Sixers just said, yeah, we'll let him play because of the fact that it was on national television, or Embiid just did a good job begging them to ask him to play?
I have no idea. I will say this. The Sixers have, within the last few years, have seized every possible opportunity they could to pump up their brand. They put, back when Vine actually existed, they on their Twitter account put Vines of Joel Embiid dribbling through his legs and dunking, before he missed the second full season with the foot problem, with the setback. They created the ad campaign, This Starts Now, 2 weeks before the trade deadline, where they ended up trading Michael Carter-Williams. They're the ones who threw a celebration, a block party on the steps of the Art Museum after getting the number one pick in the draft this past year, as if being the worst team in the NBA and getting the number one pick were something to be celebrated. So on the one hand, I can understand why people think that, hey, the Sixers are going to run him out there for a nationally televised game. I think it's natural to think that way, and I don't know for certain that didn't happen. I also think Embiid is a competitive kid who wants to play. He wants to be out there. He's been waiting more than 2.5 years to play, and any chance he gets where he thinks he can take the floor, he's going to want to take the floor.
Mike Sielski with us right now from the Philadelphia Inquirer on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. When I woke up Saturday, I saw these hateful tweets about Joel Embiid because he was dancing on the stage at the Wells Fargo Center at some concert that he was at shirtless. And I didn't really take too much umbrage to that. I didn't think it was a big deal. I understand the bad optics of it. Where did you fall in that situation?
If Joel Embiid had walked up onto the stage at the Meek Mill concert and put down a piece of cardboard and started breakdancing in the middle of the stage, if he had, reenacted Michael Jackson at, the Motown anniversary when he danced to Billie Jean and moonwalked, that would be one thing. He didn't do that. He kind of walked up on stage and, moved very minimally. This did not strike me as anything that could be remotely threatening to his knee. He's still, a civilian. He's allowed to go out and have fun. It would have been one thing if he had been bungee jumping or skiing or something like that. And I know people are gun shy because of the Andrew Bynum thing. But I think this is kind of much ado about nothing.
I agree with you. And Mike Sielski with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Mike, just with that being said, though, now that we know what the extent of the injury is and we'll see when he comes back, and we know even though the Sixers say it's not something to be scared about, who knows how long this thing could linger for. You also have chronic injuries with Embiid and his young basketball career. even though the future does look bright for the Sixers, how much does this injury just basically put the pumps on the brakes a little bit, knowing in the back of your mind this could be a chronic issue with this man for many years to come?
Yeah, I mean, that was always the risk you took by drafting him. And the question is, will he be worth the risk? I think, given that the Sixers ended up with the number 3 pick that year in what was really has turned out to be a 3-player draft, among Andrew Wiggins, Jabari Parker, and Embiid, they did the right thing by taking him. I don't think you can fault them for taking him, especially given their stated goal, which is to try to contend for championships. People forget that he was the prospective number 1 pick in that draft. Everybody went. Everybody was winless for Wiggins and all that stuff. Forget that. By the middle of February of that college basketball season, the entire world knew that if he were healthy, Joel Embiid was going to be the number 1 pick in that draft. So the fact that you could get a transcendent talent at number 3 with some injury history, I think is a risk worth taking. But yeah, this was always going to be a possibility that these injuries might linger, and who knows how long he's going to play and that sort of thing. But the flip side to that again is, would you rather be the Sixers or would you rather be the Boston Celtics, who they play Wednesday? The Celtics are a very solid team. They might be the second best team in the Eastern Conference. Isaiah Thomas is the second leading scorer in the league. What kind of chance do you give them against LeBron James and Kyrie Irving and maybe Kevin Love in the playoffs? I wouldn't say much of one. So you need to break through that, and the way to break through that kind of upper echelon of teams is to have transcendent talent, and that's what Embiid appears to be. That's what they hope Ben Simmons is, and that's the way you win championships.
Two-part question. Do we see Embiid again this year, and then also will we see Simmons this year?
I think we will probably see Embiid this year. At this point, I would be surprised if we saw Simmons. I think they're still making these calculations in their mind about the offseason and what kind of picks they're going to end up in the draft. And so it doesn't look like they're going to be in a position to flip picks with the Kings, at least right now. Maybe that changes. It looks like the Lakers are really, really bad, and so the likelihood is that they're going to hold on to that top 3 protected lottery pick. So we'll see. And the other thing with Simmons, too, is that, his foot injury has a fairly high rate of recurrence. So I would think that they would want to play it very, very safe with him. They need him there for the long term. I mean, everybody loves T.J. McConnell. I love T.J. McConnell. He's had a great season. He's a great story. Ben Simmons is a better, distributor and facilitator than T.J. McConnell is, and you want him there next year.
And now the big talk right now, and I know everyone's talking about Embiid and Simmons, but in terms of the possible movement, you're going to see Jahlil Okafor probably dealt, I would have to assume, by the trade deadline since he's not traveling with the team. What are you hearing right now on Okafor, and what would you be happy with if the Sixers get back something for Okafor?
At this point, and I've written this, and I know that everybody kind of poo-poos it. Number one, to answer the first part of your question, I'm hearing the same thing that everybody else is hearing. He's not with the team. All indications are that means he's going to be dealt relatively soon. As far as what I would be happy getting back for him, maybe I'm crazy, and everybody tells me I am, but you know what? I've been called crazy before.
I think I may have called you crazy once or twice.
Yeah. I would be happy with pennies on the dollar for Jahlil Okafor. I honestly think that if you look at the way they've played with him and without him, particularly this season, it will smooth things over for them if he is not there anymore. It's kind of this anvil that's kind of hanging over the team's head. And if you move on from him, it's not his fault. He's not a bad player. He's not a bad kid. He just doesn't fit with what they are and with where the NBA seems to be headed. So if you can move him away and Brett Brown doesn't have to worry about getting him minutes and you don't have to worry about adjusting defensively or offensively when he's on the floor, I think Richaun Holmes can be a more than adequate backup to Embiid. I think Nerlens Noel is interesting. I'm really curious to see what he decides to do in the offseason, whether he takes big money to be a bench player here, whether he takes pretty good money to be a starter elsewhere. I would love to see Noel coming off the bench for the Sixers. I think he could be an energy shot blocker, defensive player. I think he's an elite defensive player. I think you can make up for the loss of Jahlil Okafor. I really do.
Mike, before we let you run, I just want to shift gears real quickly to the NFL. I was at the Super Bowl, and right before the Super Bowl occurs on Saturday, they have the Hall of Fame announcements, and T.O. wasn't in for the Hall of Fame, which I'm still baffled by it, and I understand that he wasn't a choir boy, but if you look at his stats, I just don't get the other side of the argument. To me, he's a Hall of Famer. How about yourself?
I wrote a column the week before, Zach, saying that he should be in the Hall of Fame, and I covered the Eagles in 2004 and 2005. I was around them virtually every day when they went to the Super Bowl, and then the following season when T.O. went nuclear on them. And, he destroyed that team. But the totality of his career suggests he's a Hall of Famer. And the other thing, too, that I wrote, that I truly believe, that even though Hall of Fame voters are technically not supposed to take off-the-field matters into consideration, go back to that summer of '05 when T.O. was doing the sit-ups in the driveway and causing chaos. Like, he was the precursor to what we see from athletes on Facebook Live and Twitter all the time now. Like, Antonio Brown thinks he's cool for going on Facebook Live, while Mike Tomlin is talking in the locker room. T.O. did the functional equivalent of that, a decade ago. So in that regard, he's kind of a trailblazer. He was a modern athlete before we got fully modern. So I know that's technically not supposed to matter, but for me, as just a guy who follows football, that would have been enough for me to put him in the Hall of Fame.
And since you covered those teams, the thing I would also refute, and I get it, he wasn't the perfect teammate. I'm sure Donovan McNabb would be the first one to tell you that. But if you look at, and I'm a Patriot fan, and I will say it to this day, that Super Bowl, the Patriots, where they defeated the Eagles, he should have been named MVP. And the way that he got back on the field and everything that he went through to get back on the field was just unbelievable. And I just say, hey, he was a pretty darn good teammate that night. I know he wasn't perfect, but that let alone should just, squash this, oh, he's a bad teammate debate.
Well, what's interesting about that, though, is, and you're right, he was great that night. He was great. And I'll never forget this. Go back and look at the reasons. Go back and look at, old newspaper clips and stories about the run-up to that Super Bowl. He never once did he say he was coming back to help the Eagles win the Super Bowl. He would insist he was coming back for three reasons: to give glory to God, to give glory to himself, and to prove the doubters wrong. There was never an inclination or an indication of him saying, I want to come back because I want to help my team win a Super Bowl. It was pretty much all about, hey, I want to show everybody that I can play on this. Now, he was great in that game, and I'm sure he would have been happy if the Eagles had won the Super Bowl, and I'm sure his teammates were thrilled that he played as well as he did. But it kind of was about him. It really wasn't about the Eagles.
The funny part to me about this, though, is people are surprised that a NFL wide receiver was a diva. This isn't the first case where a wide receiver doesn't get in the Hall of Fame. And I look at the voters, and I get it. They should expand the modern era candidate to at least more than 5. I think it's too limited, but still, I don't know. And I hate to do this because a lot of the guys that got in the Hall of Fame this past weekend are well-deserving, but I don't get how you put a lot of those guys in before T.O. This guy's an all-time great wide receiver. That's why it makes no sense to me.
No, I agree with you. But he clearly wasn't Morton Anderson, so what are you going to do?
Hey, Mike, I do appreciate the time. They said we could never have a cordial conversation together, but I guess everyone's wrong.
Hey, absolutely, man. Anytime, Zach.
I did enjoy your Temple tweet today, by the way.
Yeah, it was, hey, Temple all of a sudden leads the country in swag. What else can you say?
I went to college with Dave Gerson. He was in my fraternity. I never thought he had a lot of swag, to be honest with you.
Well, hey, you know him better than I do.
Mike, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, you got it, Zach.
Thanks so much. There's Mike Sielski joining us on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. I'm just messing with Dave Gerson. I happen to like Dave Gerson very much, and he does a great job with Temple football. And I like the creativity with that announcement of the position of swag with the bunch of stuff that's going on with graphics and social media, and it's well-deserved for Dave Gerson. But I'll tell you, when I brought on Mike Sielski today, and when I put it on Twitter and he retweeted it, I had a few friends text me because myself and Mike, we've gone at it over the years over Temple football, and I disagree with his opinions on Temple football more than anybody. And I've had him on before, and we've yelled at each other, and I put the Jordan memes out there of him and Dave Murphy after they lost. But I've always respected Mike when it comes to things outside of Temple football. And I actually do happen to like Mike, and I was sitting next to him at a basketball game, and people think just because we disagree about things with Temple football that I have this intense animosity about Mike Sielski, which is just not the case. I actually like a lot of his work with the Sixers and the Eagles and all that, so I do appreciate Mike coming on. But I'll never forget, after Temple won that American Athletic Conference championship this year, how many of Mike's former interns who I went to school with and that were friends of mine started blasting me because I put up a joke of a tweet with a bunch of Jordan faces of Mike and Dave Murphy. But I do appreciate Mike coming on. And with the Sixers, and I'll get to the T.O. point in just a second, but with the Sixers, and they tried to hide this thing. And there's all these reasons why we could try to rationalize why they tried to hide the Joel Embiid injury. But to me, you have an obligation to your fan base. You need to let your fan base know when a major part is missing and it's because of an injury. And I'm not saying Bryan Colangelo should get on the air right now and tell us every single thing about every rumor when it comes to Jahlil Okafor and all the trades that they're looking into and what their free agency plans are. I get when you want to keep that a secret, but when it's an injury, yeah, you can't keep that a secret when someone has missed many, many games. And then in terms of T.O., I like Terrell Owens. He was on this show on the Friday before the Super Bowl. Is he the best teammate in the world? I can't say that. Is he a choir boy? No. But if you watch that guy play, and people could come up with any explanation they want about what his motives were returning for that Super Bowl. If you watch his career, yes, he bounced around from team to team. So what? He may have not been the best teammate. So what? This guy was an all-time great wide receiver. And the excuses that I'm hearing, and I appreciate, I talked to Vic Carucci today, and Vic wrote an article saying why he did not vote for T.O. I at least appreciate Vic talking about it. And Vic explained his case to me for 20 minutes, tried to get him on the show for tomorrow, but he was busy. He has a doctor's appointment today, and he has some other appearance tomorrow, he was telling me, but that doesn't matter. I talk about T.O., and here is why I haven't heard one good explanation why he isn't in the Hall of Fame. Who is supposed to be in the Hall of Fame? Great players, not good players. The Hall of Fame isn't for the very good. It is for great players. And how can anyone come up with an explanation as to why T.O. was not a great player? It's really a disservice to the Hall of Fame. And some Hall of Famers could say what they want. Oh, well, this guy shouldn't be in. I don't care. Writers could say, oh, he shouldn't be in. I don't care. This guy was a all-time great wide receiver. And how do you ignore the history because he had a few shouting matches with a few organizations? How do you ignore the history? Is he an all-time great wide receiver or not? How can you honestly say he's not an all-time great wide receiver? It's comical. And I don't care what era you compare him to, whatever. The era he played in, he is an all-time great wide receiver, not only in his era, but the history of the game. And the longer and longer and longer he waits is an embarrassment. And when I was talking to Vic, he goes, where's the outrage in Philadelphia about Dawkins not getting the Hall of Fame? Because everyone's really offended by T.O. not getting the Hall of Fame, which could be a bit ironic because Dawkins had such a long career. I have a feeling that people expected that Dawkins wasn't going to get it on the first try. To me, Dawkins should have been on the first try. Dawkins is an all-time great safety. Weapon X was unbelievable. I love Brian Dawkins. But I felt like people anticipated that he wasn't going to get it on the first try. Whereas T.O., he got screwed last year, so people just thought, oh, he'll get in this year. I thought it too. But he didn't get in, so it makes no sense. 6099199D200. This is the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. What we'll do right now is we'll take a quick break. And when we get back, and by the way, Coach Collins is going to be joining us at 5:15. But when we get back, there is a news story involving a member of the Sandusky family, which will make you want to throw up. It's very tough to read. And also, we got to continue to address the Charles Oakley saga. We'll do that when we come back. We're overdue for a break. Time right now in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates Studios is 4:40. Zach Gelb Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.